Good morning, information technologists. Welcome to the very last day of COC 505, Foundations of Information Technology. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I appreciate that. I've got some good news for you today, for those of you on campus. There will be no quiz today. We've typically started each day with a quiz. No quiz today. There's some bad news, though. And the bad news is when we end today on campus, there will be an exam. As I mentioned before, you're going to take the exam online. So when we're done talking, after a little while, we're going to go take a little break. Then we'll go next door into the lab. I will sort of divide you up, though, so you're not sitting right next to each other. As I mentioned before, for those of you on campus, you can use a page of notes, anything that you've written on a single page. I am going to ask you to leave that page with me just because I'm somewhat interested and curious about what people do write down, what you think is interesting and important there for you. The exam for those of you on campus is some true-false questions, about 20. Some multiple choice questions, about 7 or so. And then 3 short answer questions. And by short answer, I really do mean short answer. You don't have, this is not an essay, and this is not a paper. Sometimes when people are answering short answer questions, they want to do things like repeat the question as part of the answer, or you don't have to do that. Okay? You really just need to write just a couple sentences probably in direct response to the question itself. I don't want the amount of writing there to limit you or slow you down, so they're really just 3. They really relate to a number of major issues that we've talked about in this class. The material that we talk about tonight could show up on the exam, although there's really just a question or 2 there from that. So if you're just sort of paying attention to what's happening, I think you'll be well prepared for that. All right? I haven't said enough that being a graduate student is hard work. This is hard work. If you've survived this far, and I think most of you have, then you've obviously put a significant amount of time into this class and to ultimately into the program itself. You should feel good about your accomplishments. You're not done with your entire program, but you're almost done with this particular course here, and that's got to be good. By the time you walk away this evening, for those of you on campus, I mean, there's nothing else to do. You've submitted the last assignment set before this evening. You're going to take that exam, and you're going to be on your way. For many of you, it just begins again next week, though. If you're taking an on-campus course in Session B, those do begin next week. And for those of you on campus, if you have questions about classes and programs and things like that, and you haven't talked to Professor Jacob Hoppe, would you please do so? Schedule a time to meet with him if you need some help. If you feel confident and okay, then you certainly don't have to do this, but he's here to really look at a possible program, recommend classes, help you answer questions, or what have you. A number of you already figured out that there are many different departments with different kinds of setups that you'll need to interact with. Unfortunately, the computer science department is just one of many. Now, it is a very important one because this is your academic department. But in order to navigate your way through being a graduate student, you deal with admissions, you deal with financial aid, you deal with student services. There are a lot of different things there. And as some of you have already noticed because you've talked to me about it, well, for example, our online courses. There's another layer between us in the computer science department and you as a student. And that's our Office of Continuing and Distance Education. The acronym is OCDE. I'm not making that up. So some of you have already discovered that in order to actually do online classes, you do have to interact with them, and they actually have another set of policies and procedures to deal with. I wish it was really straightforward. It isn't always. So, Professor Hoppe, for those of you on campus, or for those of you watching at a distance, that's my colleague, Professor Michael Patch. Professor Patch is your contact person for dealing with the ins and outs of doing our program. So again, I know it's a lot of work, but good for you. Thanks for putting a lot of effort into this. Thanks for being part of our program. Software manager. Would you like to be reminded of this in one day? Oh, sure. Why not? Okay. All right. I know you've taken a look at some news, especially dealing with artificial intelligence for one of the assignments this evening. And I think I mentioned we might even have gone to the New York Times site before. But let me just drop there and see if there happens to be anything interesting. If you're not familiar with Robbie the Robot, who also showed up in a different incarnation in the Lost in Space TV show. You know, this is 1950s and 60s artificial intelligence. So that's not quite a current event, is it? Oh, yep, that's what I want to do. Let's take a look and see if there's anything interesting in the news, at least from the New York Times, as they are codifying artificial intelligence. This first article here, glad they upped. By the way, there's, if you got confused up here, there are other things down below that are more recent. If an algorithm wrote this, how would you even know? You remember when we investigated the historic development of computer science and the idea that Alan Turing had about artificial intelligence, and the idea of, can you distinguish a human being from a computer? That's the Turing test. So these are getting better, as you can imagine. Still, the free-form interactive ones, when you're trying to interact with a computer system, I don't think that they can really fool people. But the algorithms here that write articles, yeah, as you might expect, they are pretty good. If an algorithm wrote this, how would you even know? Let me hazard a guess that you think a real person has written what you're reading. Maybe you're right, maybe not. Perhaps you should ask me to confirm that. Because these days, a shocking amount of what we're reading is created not by humans, but by computer algorithms. We probably should have expected that the information assaulting us 24/7 couldn't all have been created by people bent over their laptops. So, kind of some interesting articles, and that's related to that concept of the Turing test. And then last time we talked about chatterbots, or similar, the ELIZA types of programs. Okay, interesting. If you can't tell what was written by a human, you're not alone, according to that study there. Okay. So I guess for the final time in CSC 505, I can just encourage you to keep up with the news. I think it would be helpful, both not only in class, but in your future careers. Anybody just really want to share their AI story? Be okay if you want to. Is it really interesting and exciting?
I pulled one off of here,
Mm-hmm.
off the New York Times. If you go down a little bit further, something about saying, yep, scratching the second verb. Talks a little bit about him, but then it goes into the program or study that they've been doing for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
A combination of games and
Right. Mm-hmm.
stuff to map out.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the precursor to this today. This is in the area of strong AI. And yeah, I noticed here, will you be able to live forever? And that is really the, did it come, or do I got to kick it in the head here, or what's the deal? Sebastian said. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. They didn't, it was probably about a third of the way down, a couple paragraphs about the ability to, potential ability to map out what he calls the human connectome.
Okay.
All the neurons.
Yeah.
And then be able to record that and replay it at a later time.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting stuff. Yep. We've mapped the human genome. No reason we can't map neuronic connections in the brain, for sure. Yeah. B?
Well, mine, I forgot what mine was titled.
That's okay.
But the concept behind mine, or the message behind what I did was that, we are creating artificial intelligence which we humans don't fully understand.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a fear to that, right? There's
Yeah.
a fear that they can morph themselves into something much bigger than us that we can control.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real risk, and many are actually theorizing how, kind of like Terminator
Yeah.
could really happen now,
Mhm.
right? Because
Mhm.
everything in your life now is controlled by computer
Mhm.
programs.
Mm-hmm.
And from an ethical standpoint and a social standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'll show you, I'll make reference to one of the earliest articles dealing by that with a specific group of people who first were concerned about that singularity when computers surpass humans in intelligence, and how will you control it? And yeah, those are interesting questions.
So, you about that, too?
Yeah, they do.
So, well, you mentioned Turing before,
Mhm.
the Turing test. And in the article I did, it says for the first time last summer, the computer passed the Turing test.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, many people heralded that. The problem is for most people, I don't think most people would have been fooled. The computer pretended to have a disability and be slightly psychotic there. So, yeah. And I think a lot of people, well, anyway, the old idea that when you are being watched, then you're not always, yeah. So, but okay, yeah, that's interesting. Good. Yeah. All right, let's keep an eye on that, shall we? Good. So last time we began Unit 4, we took a little look last time about your future as an information technologist, and then we turned our attention to the future of IT. Sure wish my technology worked. That would be so much better. Yeah, and this is day 8, right? One of the things that I asked you to do as an assignment, and something we've talked about a couple different times, is trying to predict the future. And I shared this with you just a little bit last time, but I want to talk about it again. When you stop and think about it, a lot of people, when they're trying to predict the future, are trying to predict specific products. Actually, many of the revolutions in IT haven't been specific products. That was true in the beginning, but anymore it hasn't really been the case. But rather than just products, it's what we want to refer to as the infrastructure. If you think back to the mid-20th century, you probably can't do that. And I can't very well either. Let's see, it was on Jeopardy the other night. The question was something like, there are only 7,000 of these in existence in 1947, but by 1956 there were 70,000 or something like that. And what was it? And the answer was television sets. Yeah, makes sense. I guessed transistors, but that was too geeky, I think. So now when you stop at everybody said, well, yeah, television, what a great, fantastic invention. Obviously, inventing a television set by itself has absolutely no value, does it? What do you need?
Radio station.
Yeah, you need some kind of distribution network. In the mid-20th century, you needed some wireless. Yeah, okay. So, did everybody have access to a television in 1940? Well, even if you owned a television set in central Wisconsin in 1940, it didn't do any good. There were no television stations nearby broadcasting a signal that you could pick up. So you could have the most technological advanced piece of technology, but not having that infrastructure. The internet itself really wasn't a thing, but it was designed as an infrastructure. And that's kind of been the backbone of much of technological progress for many, many years, hasn't it? So it's hard to predict these things, but one way to think about it is not just as, well, what's the next big product, but what's the next big environment? How many people remember Google Glass? Google's kind of stopped that. It was never a commercially viable product, although two of my colleagues in the department just had to have one, so we had to shell out the $2 or $3 grand on the beta test for them. And I'm sure we're going to see something like that redefined and redeveloped, part of the whole genre of wearable computing, and now we're talking about a true human-computer interaction, right, type of thing. The idea is relatively old. We're still trying to fit together how do all these pieces work and what will be that binding environment for all of them. When you figure that out, then you'll probably do very well. Yeah. Any thoughts or comments about that? Hard to think big. Hard to think beyond the pieces. When you look at the entire puzzle as well as the individual pieces, yeah, much harder to do, but apparently, at least that's what the visionaries tell me that they do. Since I'm not one, I don't know. Okay. All righty. There are some things it's better not to know. So, if you spend too much time like me watching Star Trek, when every other episode of Deep Space Nine, somebody's going into the future or back in time or something like that, really makes it really confusing. Maybe we just shouldn't know the future, should we? So last time we talked about, well, your future in IT and then artificial intelligence, one aspect of artificial intelligence. In just a little bit, I'll review that with you, but this evening I want to focus on this, the concept of thinking machines. Kind of a funny title. Most people in artificial intelligence refer to computers as machines rather than computers. We as IT professionals would probably entitle this intelligent computers. But most people in the world of artificial intelligence prefer the term thinking machine. It's kind of steeped in history. Okay? So when you see thinking machines, it's okay to think intelligent computers. This is one aspect of artificial intelligence. The question on the table before us is, will computers think? Sometimes that question is phrased a little differently as, will computers be like people? When a technologist or scientist asks this question, they're not as concerned about the physical appearance. When we're asking, will computers be like people, it's not, of course, a good robot kind of sort of has to look like a person. But that's not the key idea. The key idea are the attributes, the characteristics, the mental characteristics and attributes there. So will computers think, and certainly we mean think as people do, will computers be like people? Will they have similar attributes and characteristics? What's the answer today to these questions? Change it from will to are, or do. Do computers think? Are computers like people? Got to change the verb tense. The answer today is no. Right? In 2015, I'm not aware of any competent computer scientist that says computers think as people do. Computers have the same attributes and characteristics of people. Now, there are a number of computer scientists who say that yeah, computers have a certain level of insight, knowledge, intelligence. I've had people say, well, some of them are as smart as bugs, or whatever. Okay. But today, I'm just not familiar with any computer scientist who's willing to say that right now, 2015, computers think and are the same mental capabilities as human beings. But that's not the question. This is a futures question. And I'm thinking it's the pretty near future, too. This isn't something way out there. This is a Time magazine. Back in the day when Time actually physically published... Wait a minute. It's Newsweek. Does Time still publish a physical magazine? Does anybody know? Okay, it was Newsweek that went totally digital. So this is a Time magazine from 1,000,000 years ago. Actually from the last millennium, from the 1990s. And you notice the headline, Can Machines Think? And the subhead says, they already do, say scientists, so what if anything is special about the human mind? Now when I saw that magazine on the newsstand, I said, what? So I bought it. And when I read the article, no, there was no computer scientist in 1997 saying that computers are intelligent. I guess that was just there to get people to buy the magazine. Okay, did it work? Yep, it worked on me. So we've been asking this question for a long time. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I did is I was looking for the earliest popular level account of strong AI research, computers thinking, being like people. And one of the first ones I found was from 1987. And at the end of today, I'm going to share some of that with you. And you're going to think, gosh, that sounds exactly what we're talking about today. By the way, I will ask you to answer this question. I will give you my answer also. And your answer doesn't have to be the same as mine. But I want to point out something interesting. However you answer this artificial intelligence question, depends upon more than technology. It really depends upon a worldview. We've talked about worldviews a couple times. I asked you to think about it in the context of the historic development of IT. And one of the things I want to point out today is how a person's worldview is really going to color or influence how they approach this problem and what they think the answer to the problem is. By the way, we probably should review that. This is not a concept that is just hanging by itself. It's important to us in IT because, as I told you before, we brand us as the technology program with a soul. And by that we mean we really elevate people in the program. A computer system is a combination of three things: hardware, software, people. And of those three components, we should always be wrapped around people. A computer is a tool to allow people to productively and efficiently solve problems. A worldview specifically, again, are ideas about God and ideas about other people. Succinctly, a worldview encompasses your ideas about God. Sometimes people will answer that and say, wait. I don't believe in God. I'm going to say, that's okay. That's your idea about God. In other words, you say there is no God. That's just a worldview. And then your ideas about other people. For example, are people basically good? Are people basically bad? And there's a host of other concerns too. All right. I'm going to point out, when we get into the depths of this, we'll see how this idea of a worldview plays out. I haven't shared a whole lot of current computer scientists and information technologists with you. We've talked about some historic ones, and I know you've read about a few in the current events, but it's probably a good idea to just have another name or two floating around there. You read about Dr. Fred Brooks. Now, Dr. Brooks is a big name, probably a name that every IT professional should be able to dredge out of their mind and at least say, yeah, I remember reading and learning something about him. Another computer scientist / information technologist you should probably heard of is Dr. Don Knuth, that most people look at as the father of modern computer science. Now he's still alive, so he wasn't developing it 100 years ago. But its resurgence beginning in, the late 20th century, many people point to this individual as a very key player in that. It's kind of interesting. When I first came to Concordia, and this is a long time ago, the current academic dean at the time was Dr. Dave Egerbrecht. And I had been here about a year or so, and he came and he asked me, he said, "Have you ever heard of Don Knuth?" And I said, "Yes. Everybody who's a computer scientist has heard of Don Knuth." He says, "Oh, I guess he's some kind of big deal, huh?" "Yes, he's kind of." He says, "Oh, that's interesting. I grew up with Don Knuth." I said, "What?" Sort of like he knew a rock star, right? He said, "Yeah, I went to school with him." Don Knuth grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He went to the same Lutheran high school as the dean of this, the former academic dean here. But one thing that's interesting about Don Knuth is he's always made it very plain that his worldview had a profound impact on his vocation, on his profession, and he's not shy about saying that he was able to do the things he was able to do in computer science because he was influenced by his Christian worldview perspective. As a matter of fact, one of his books, now remember, this is a computer scientist, okay? Somebody with several doctoral degrees. One of his books, as a matter of fact, more than one, is about Christianity. This is one, 316. He just took various biblical text references and expanded upon them. He doesn't see any conflict between his Christian worldview and his pursuit of hardcore computer science. As a matter of fact, in that book, another one of his interests was typography, etc. This is probably the most classic and famous verse out of the Bible, John 3:16. Many people look at this as the gospel in a nutshell, good news. And what Don Knuth did is he rewrote it, he retranslated it. You can see he kind of made this acrostic with the word gospel highlighted in it. This is how God loved the world. He gave his only child so that all people with faith in him can escape destruction and live a full life now and forever. Don Knuth has a couple other books too, and he's talked about this widely. Now, that means nothing to you except to realize that a worldview will impact what you think about computer science and information technology. Why are they important? It's because all the interesting questions in IT, and that includes the AI question, are questions about people. I mean, isn't that the focus of IT? IT is a service organization. We're serving people. We're helping people solve problems. We're thinking about people's needs in a user-centric way. We're behaving in professional manner, and the list goes on, doesn't it? The fundamental IT questions are all about people. What is this person's problem? That's our focus. It's not the hardware and the software, right? I mean, IT isn't the study of hardware and software. IT is really the study of people and their problems, and then determining how we can solve those problems effectively. Okay, we'll see it again. Lately it seems like it's nothing but zeros. See, when artificial intelligence really takes hold, then you're okay. All right. We'll move on. Now, up front, I asked the question, today are computers intelligent? I told you the answer. The answer is no. But today, computers absolutely appear intelligent. A couple examples. I was going to bring this up and have it ready. I think, 3 years ago now, Jeopardy is an American game show. If you're not familiar with Jeopardy, contestants try to win money by answering questions in a funny way. They see the answer and then they have to phrase a question that matches that answer. I think this was 3 years ago when IBM developed a very powerful computer that they named Watson. The term Watson, by the way, is named after the founder of IBM, Thomas J. Watson Sr. And what this computer did is hello, Watson. I can't talk to you now, Watson. Watson is everywhere. Use Watson, build with Watson. Hey, I want to learn about Watson on Jeopardy. I guess I should have searched for that, huh? Oops, Jeopardy. Go. It's the same thing again? Okay. In the news. Hey, Watson's got a Facebook presence. Did it not go to... Oh, it didn't. That's why. IBM Watson supercomputer destroys humans in Jeopardy. Is this from 2012? Gosh, all the years...
Lowe's presents How to Make a Friend Speak When She's Speechless.
Wow, Kim, I'm speechless. Your new bathroom looks so beautiful, I can't even talk right now. I literally can't even open my mouth to talk.
You can't.
I'm going to treat you to a short round of Jeopardy. It's going to be hosted by a member of our Jeopardy Clue Crew. Please welcome Jimmy McGuire. Gentlemen.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. What do you say we play Jeopardy? Let's get right into the Jeopardy round. These categories: a man, a plane, a canal, Erie, Chicks Dig Me, children's book titles, My Michelle, MC5, and finally, vocabulary. Ken, you're in the first position. Please make a selection.
I've never said this on TV. Chicks Dig Me for 200, please, Jimmy.
Kathleen Kenyon's excavation of this city, mentioned in Joshua, showed the walls had been repaired 17 times. Watson.
What is Jericho?
Correct.
400, same category.
This mystery author and her archaeologist hubby dug in hopes of finding the lost Syrian city of Urkesh. Watson.
Who is Agatha Christie?
Correct.
Same category, 600.
At the Olduvai Gorge in 1959, she and hubby Lewis found a
Mary Leakey.
1.75 million year old Australopithecus Boise-eyed skull. Watson.
Who is Mary Leakey?
You're right.
800, same category.
Harriet Boyd Hawes was the first woman to discover...
Well, anyway, what you're watching there, Watson is AI. There's not a human being there. The machine itself was trying to determine the answers to the questions. And if you're wondering, it did ultimately win. The two human beings it was playing against were widely regarded as the two best Jeopardy players. One had won the most money ever on Jeopardy. The other had won the most games ever on Jeopardy. So, pretty impressive. Okay? Today, computers can play games like chess. Computers can do lots of things. You read some things about them. We had a discussion about communication with them, etc. So, absolutely, today, computers appear intelligent. Now, okay, this cartoon was actually done before Jeopardy, but you can see the Quiz Bowl and Wilson High versus Tech High, and the robots are winning all the time, right? Yeah, exactly. Why do computers appear intelligent? This is for a reason that we already know. Now, you got to think way back in time to the first unit when we talked about those 9 grand ideas of computer science. And we made a relationship between a couple of the grand ideas, 2 of the I words. And the concept that made that relationship stick is something called information theory. The reason that computers appear intelligent is because of information theory. Let's review that. What does information theory says? It sets up a relationship between these two grand ideas. Intelligence is the cause, information is the effect. You can state that as either intelligence is necessary to create information, or information can only come from intelligence. Right? Intelligence is the cause, information is the effect. That's one of the things, and the one thing that we care about, that information theory says. We investigated this before, too. An example is like a book. When you read through a book, whether it's J. Glenn Brookshire's book, do we have the discussion in here about this is going to another edition? And okay, anyway. So it's a good thing. Look how beat up mine is. Even though you've never met J. Glenn Brookshire, you know there was an intelligent author behind this. Why? Because the information content in the book demands that it came from an intelligent source. That's information theory. The way that I like to express it in this context is this. Computers are basically a reflection of the image of their human creators. Computers are a reflection of the image of their human creators. You know, image, just in a mirror, I wanted to use that term because I'm going to use it in a different context in a little bit, just so you could have heard it one time. Interestingly, when people read a book, very few people get all emotional and distraught and say, wow, it's weird how the matter here developed information. Very few people are confused into thinking that somehow the ink and paper is what developed the message. We all know there was a human author. But when it comes to a computer system, many people miss that behind the computer system, there's lots of intelligence. There's the intelligence of the computer scientists who created it, the programmers, the IT professionals, and also the user. Does it require intelligence to use a computer system? Yes, it does. Didn't you demonstrate that in assignment 3C, 3D, whatever the two with the macro and the spreadsheet were? Yeah, it's not like falling off a log here, right? So what's happening though, and let me tell you, got to stay here. Sometimes people are confused into believing that a computer system is intrinsically intelligent. Now it is different than a book, isn't it? Because computers are interactive. They can change based upon the circumstance. And you saw Watson demonstrate that beautifully. I mean, it speaks very well, right? Good enunciation. It knew exactly how to play the game and everything like that. Wow. Okay. All right. We're going to come back to this idea. Tuck it away. Before we can answer questions about computer systems and technology, let's review some fundamental ideas about people. Because remember what that AI question is. Can computers think like people? Can computers be like people? I guess to answer that question, we're going to have to know some things about people. We started the class talking about hardware, software, and people. And I told you way back when that, someday we're going to give a definition of people. That sounds really funny, doesn't it? Well, I think we'll do that today. But let's say a couple things about people that, let's slide into this a little bit. Here are two things that I told you about the people component of an IT system in the first unit of this course. Number one, of the three components, people are the most important component. Again, When somebody says it or writes it down, it seems obvious. But for whatever reason, when they're in the midst of doing this, we forget about it. The reason that the people are the most important component is because today, people provide an attribute of the system that hardware and software together cannot provide. And that is, people provide the intelligence of the system. Okay. I'm going to share with you my definition of people. It's fine. You may have a different definition. And as soon as I start putting up my definition, you will notice that it's obviously colored by my worldview. It is. If you ask me, what is it that makes a human being a human being? There are a couple aspects. Number one, people were created in God's image. Now, that's a funny word. Standard word that Christians will say, but it means something different than what you might expect. In Genesis 1:27, Genesis is the first book in the Bible. It's the book of beginnings. Chapter 1 is about origins. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. This word image, though, does not mean physical. This is not saying we look like God. Because for a Christian, God the Father doesn't have a physical appearance. He's spirit. Image in this context means attributes or characteristics. If you asked me as a Christian, why are people intelligent? I would say it's because we were created by an omnipotent, that is a super intelligent God. Why are people creative? It's because we were created by a creative God. These image really refers to different characteristics. Only one is intelligent, and there are others, too. This is Foxtrot comic. Did we see one of these before? Anyway, Jason's like the brilliant 8-year-old. Here's what I don't get. If God created man in his own image, how come we don't also have godly powers? It seems like a big tease to make us look like a bunch of gods but not be able to act the part. Are you familiar with the term infinite wisdom? I want to hurl some planets around, dang it. Anyway, we neither look like God nor have godly powers, but it is funny, right? Thanks for laughing. The other part of my definition is there's more to people than just material. We obviously are material. We obviously have a body. But in a Christian worldview perspective, people have both a body and another aspect. We have a soul or spirit. Paul, writing to the Thessalonians, may your whole spirit, that is, soul and body, both of these components, be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. What he's indicating is people are more than just material, physical beings. The idea of having a soul or spirit, many different worldviews accept that. Although not all, but many different worldviews do. As a matter of fact, it's pretty popular in cartoons and things like that. In exchange for my eternal soul, you'll give me this bike for the weekend? Why do I feel like I'm getting ripped off? Okay, don't do it. Bad exchange. Bad exchange. What's unique about people vis-a-vis problem solving? If we're going to investigate artificial intelligence, if we need to figure out how computers can be like people, we better ensure we understand what's unique about people in the context of problem solving. Sorry, vis-a-vis is just French. It means in relation to. It's easier to say than, I don't know why, What's unique about people in the context of problem solving? We've actually talked about both of these. One just a few moments ago, and the other in the first unit of the class. One unique characteristic of human beings is our intelligence. This, of course, is not to say that other kinds of life are not intelligent, but certainly most people would agree that human beings have a different kind of intelligence than dogs or porpoises or snails. You know what? My last comment there is really a worldview comment. Not everybody believes that. There are many people, especially materialists, who would say there are different gradations and levels of intelligence. There are a lot of people who put a lot of stock in something called intelligent quotient and intelligence testing. I'm here to tell you that every person is intelligent. But that's really drawn from my worldview perspective. Let me just share one aspect of that with you. Sometimes when I say that, people say, oh, if everybody's intelligent, does that mean everybody gets an A in this class? The answer to that is unfortunately no. There's no reason it couldn't. But if you're not aware of this, and this is important to remember, grades don't measure intelligence. Grades do not measure intelligence. They measure some things, and they're important things. When I was hiring people, I looked at grades, because grades absolutely measure aptitude, effort, knowledge base, and a few other things. But grades do not measure intelligence. Is the person getting a B plus in this class less intelligent than the person getting an A minus? I really don't think so. So what was the difference? Well, let's start with my big one, aptitude. Different people are wired differently. And by wired, I mean some people are more natural in certain areas than others. You probably notice this growing up, friends, somebody, the person sitting next to you in a class in school, and you had a hard time with it, they breezed through it. They didn't study, didn't crack a book, they just kind of knew it. Maybe you knew some natural athletes, or some people who could play musical instruments well and you couldn't. We're all wired a little differently. Some people have a natural aptitude for information technology and computer science. Now, I'm assuming that applies to most of us in this room. Otherwise, you may not be here. Now, at the same time, even if you weren't wired for IT, you could still do well in IT if you supplied the effort. You can get over that. Yeah, it doesn't come naturally. I can't remember it all easily. You can still do it, but it takes a lot of effort. You got to apply yourself, think about it, work with it, immerse yourself, etc. And quite frankly, when I was hiring people, when I worked at Hewlett-Packard, I wasn't as concerned with were they natural or did they just immerse themselves? Because either way, I recognized that they had what I needed. Now, does that mean that somebody who doesn't do well in IT is like an idiot? Absolutely not. Good. Tonight, lecture on fourth dimensional physics and ontological topology. Sorry, fellas, we're going to have to see some IQ. See, IQ. Let's just pretend for a moment that that's real. Those are just words. Ontological physics and, fourth dimensional physics, ontological topology, those are just words put together. Let's pretend it's real. Let's pretend that you wanted to become a world-class researcher in fourth dimensional physics and ontological topology. What do you know about that today? Nothing. Could I give you a final exam in that class and expect you to do? No. I'd call you an idiot. Now, if you really wanted to, could you apply yourself? Absolutely. If you really, really wanted to learn that, you could. You may not be a world-class researcher, but I bet you could understand it. Does that mean you're an idiot because you don't know it today? No. You know more today about IT than you did 8 weeks ago. Were you an idiot then? No, not at all. Why? You used your intelligence to develop this expertise. Good for you. Intelligence. That's nice. Here's the second unique characteristic that people possess: creativity. Human beings are creative. You know, when we talked about weak AI, and I mentioned that problem, and that problem was common sense. Creativity and common sense are linked, to be sure. And this is the aspect that computers still suffer from, and that's that independent, worthwhile exploration, creative endeavors. Here, human beings still far, far exceed computer systems. If you think about it, human beings are just natural-born heuristic problem solvers. Well, here's that word again. The word heuristic means, it's a discovery process. Keep going. What do you mean by the heuristic? Say that again, sorry? Okay, understand. Yep. Discovering, understanding, but not in an algorithmic sense, right? Heuristics are rules of thumb, gut feelings. They are heuristics are thoughts that we believe to be adequate, but are really only determined in actual practice. Sometimes people refer to heuristics as a trial and error method of learning. It's not an algorithm. Computers function via algorithms. To come up with an algorithm, though, is a heuristic process. Let me prove that we are kind of natural heuristic problem solvers. Small children, young children. You know, if you're around, if you have children or nieces and nephews, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, their favorite question, a 5-year-old's favorite question is why? Thank you. Their favorite statement is no. Okay? But their favorite question is why? Children are naturally curious. And if you answered their question, you know, many people don't because they could go on forever with those things. Children could be occupied with blocks for hours and hours. They are being creative. Right? Yeah. Natural, heuristic, problem solvers. That's what we are as human beings. Let me come back to worldviews, because when we investigate deeply in just a little bit strong AI, you need to understand at least 2 different worldviews that I'll contrast here. One worldview is called a humanistic worldview. The humanistic worldview says a lot of things, but one of the aspects that I want to focus on, well, actually 2, but one of the aspects I want to focus on is the idea of authority. And in the humanistic worldview, you see the root human there as the central aspect of all authority. Man is the authority. Famous quote by Greek philosopher Protagoras, about 300 BC, man is the measure of all things. By that, what he meant is human beings are the ultimate pinnacle. We are the ultimate authority. Contrast that with a different worldview, and this is the worldview that I'm coming from in this class and in this program, and that's a Christian worldview perspective. A Christian would not elevate humans to the pinnacle. A Christian would celebrate the person of Christ as the ultimate authority. I'm going to show you how those 2 different worldviews lead to a different conclusion when it comes to strong AI research. I'm not asking you to subscribe to one or the other. but you need to see how a worldview will color and influence your perspective on everything, including IT and AI. All right, back to that original question then. Will computers think and be intelligent? My cartoon. It was bound to happen. They're beginning to think like binary computers. See, there's an addition problem, and the second grader is writing in ones and zeros, just like you can do, right? Good. Last time then, let's just quickly review. We saw the origins of artificial intelligence. Let's just look at those grand themes again. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll pick up the rest of the story. I'll never ask you a specific date. But the reason I mention this date is, first of all, yeah, it's 60 years ago. But it was a mere 10 years after the first true computer was developed, the ENIAC, in 1946. There was a seminal conference, and people asked themselves the question, could computers do other things? Could they learn? Could they do any intelligent act like a human being can do? By the 1960s, there were some early successes. We saw checkers playing, game playing. We saw that ELIZA-like program. We saw some folks doing things that we thought would be, whoa, this should have been really hard, like proving theorems in calculus. We created computers to do them. They did them spectacularly well. Then by the 1970s, there were some real high hopes for AI. Folks said, man, we're going to have robot servants in just a few years, right? And then reality bit. So by 30 years ago or so, people discovered, wow, the things we thought would be easy are actually really hard. Common sense, creativity. Whoa, really hard to do this. What happened then is, because of those real problems, the field of AI split into two major camps or areas. The area that we looked at last time was artificial intelligence is overrated. We find most people prefer the user-friendly advantage of artificial stupidity. What's up? You know, if you think about it, they might be onto something. Who wants to play against a checkers program that's going to beat you every time? Wouldn't you rather win? I don't know. I would. So yeah, the first camp that we saw last time was weak AI. A classic example of weak AI that we investigated last time was an expert system. And I told you that the goal of weak AI is to simulate intelligent behavior in a specific area. Example, medical diagnosis. I had a perfect example. My youngest daughter happened to be in the hospital for most of the time since I saw you last to now. And in all that time, I never asked anybody there to use it. I guess I was thinking another thing. I asked my own physician if she uses an expert system. She does. I just imagined that they had a few expert systems in that hospital. But remember, the goal is very much to simulate intelligent behavior. Nobody who's a weak AI researcher believes that we're truly creating a human mind, simulating this. And again, specific area, medical diagnostics or what have you. Here's where we ended last time. So, what are the purposes? Well, the purpose of weak AI is similar to the purpose of IT in general. First of all, is to assist people, right? I mean, that's why IT exists, as a problem-solving tool for other people. First of all, to assist people. And then I shared with you to replace people. Yeah, thank you. Not people. We'll still keep people around. Just their jobs. And I know that we can have all kinds of knee-jerk reactions, and hopefully we talked about elevator operator people and things like that, and that didn't bother us. Maybe airline pilots, maybe that might bother us, but you'll never know, right? Because the door is closed up there. But I think we'd be unrealistic to say that technology is not going to displace job functions. It did this from day one. You're hired, but remember, you can be replaced by a machine. Believe me. Okay. Let's take a break.